Welcome to Quantum RX, the podcast that teaches you how to move beyond stuck emotions and trauma for mind, body, and spirit healing. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. Have you ever noticed that when you're calm and connected to yourself and the world and you're feeling really grounded, signs and synchronicities show up out of nowhere? Maybe you think about your best friend and she decides to call you or text you, in that moment, or even a couple of hours later. Or you walk outside and you find a feather on the ground, or a bird flies over and that bird has a symbolic meaning to you. Or you're walking around and you find a bunch of loose change or, a $20 bill. All of these things have the ability to happen on a daily basis, but it's us and the energy and the vibration that we're putting out that often prevents it from happening. Like when you are on that hamster wheel of life and you're just going through the motions, you don't see these things happening. And I know I have been there too. I have this stuff happen to me pretty much on a daily basis now, but I've gone through in the past through waves of, where I would have a bunch of these things happen. I would get all sorts of little signs and synchronicities. I'd think about a friend and they would, call that next day. And then I'll have times when I'm so, bogged down and buried in what I'm doing that those things aren't coming through. And my brain just doesn't even have the ability to pick up on it because it's so bogged down with life and stress and all of the things that we can get stuck in on a daily basis. So today we are going to cover my 4-step plan to bring divine connection and communication into your life daily. And that involves tuning out and then tuning in, asking, observing, and then taking action. If you're curious as to if you have any stored emotions or trauma that might be causing your illness, preventing you from achieving your highest goals, or even just showing up as the best, most authentic version of yourself, I invite you to take my free stored emotions and trauma quiz, and you will find that link in the show notes. So let's get back into these, the divine connection and communication and these signs and how we can bring that into our daily lives more frequently. Like honestly, it can happen so many moments throughout the day. It's just you being aware and allowing for it to happen. So it's interesting because when I am, when I'm going through stuff, I often will talk to my guardian angels. I talk to especially my grandparents who have passed because I felt very connected to them. And I know I've got other guardian angels as well, but I very much talk to my maternal grandmother and grandfather quite a bit. And it's really interesting because I get little signs from them and it's really, really funny. So on a daily basis, my life tends to look like I get up, I get my kids ready for school, I come home, I do some kind of typically organization and kind of self-care and preparation for the day. And then I get into all of the things that I need to do. But at different times of the day, like I get up and I'll take the dog for like a quick 15 or 20-minute walk, or I go outside and I just let the sun, sit on my face. I'll go outside and sometimes just sit in the backyard. Sometimes I'll go out into our front yard and walk in the grass barefoot and allow my body to ground. I always look up at the sun and allow the sun to kind of just bathe me. I look at the sky. I do all of these things, but there's no rhyme or reason as to when I do them. It's just when I have a break. If I'm working with clients, I will, sometimes step out in between them. Sometimes, if I'm doing some busy work, I'll work for an hour and then, pop out. Sometimes I'm working for 2 or 3 hours and then pop out. So there really is no schedule to what I'm doing, but I am intentional about, going outside and doing these things and checking in with myself and grounding and things of that nature. So it's really interesting because when I'm doing a lot of talking to like my grandfather, for instance, it's really, really interesting because I'll often call on him when I need some support. I'll call on my grandma sometimes when I need some kind of divine guidance in the healing realm, but sometimes it's like, Grandpa, I just want that, solid support and like unconditional love that he used to provide. And it was really interesting because I will walk outside for no apparent reason. And I live near Peterson Air Force Base and Fort Carson here in Colorado, in the Colorado Springs area. And it's really interesting because yes, and also the Air Force Academy, that's literally right down the street from me. And so we tend not to see much from the Air Force Academy because they're often doing training type of stuff. And it's not quite, they're not using the fighter jets and Black Hawk helicopters and stuff like that, but the other two are. And so it's really interesting because sometimes I will be thinking about my grandfather or have had a conversation with him out loud in my house or outside sometimes, but usually out loud in my house. I'll walk outside and 3 fighter jets will fly over my head. Why did I walk outside at that very moment? Right. That happens not all the time, but often when I'm connecting with him. And that has also happened with Black Hawk helicopters. Several of them will be flying by right when I walk outside or, within a couple of minutes of me being outside. And I personally do not believe that is coincidence because we live here. There are many, many days when none of that happens. That's not happening very frequently. And what prompted me to go outside at that very moment so that I saw that? And to give you a little background on why that's important to me is because when I was a little girl, my grandfather was in the Army and he actually did fly on helicopters. And so we also we would go visit Air Force bases. I grew up in South Florida. And so we would go to air shows. Sometimes we would, sometimes go to there was a little executive airport by my house. We would go over there and watch the airplanes. Sometimes we would go, to the port of Miami or, Fort Lauderdale. And sometimes the big, military ships would come in, like battleships, and dock, and we would go check them out. And a lot of times they had fighter jets on them. So like many instances where I did this with my grandfather. And even though I was a girl growing up, I had a bunch of fighter jets in my bedroom. Like even in high school, like I had stuffed animals, I had like collegiate stuff, especially for the football teams that I liked. And I had fighter jets hanging from my ceiling. So that is why that's something that's very personal and special to me. And so I do not believe it is a coincidence. I think it is very much divine timing. And it's because I am aware, I'm tuned in, and I asked for it. I didn't say, Grandpa, send me, fighter jets, send me a Black Hawk helicopter. I just said, I'll just be like, hey, send me a sign to let me know that you're with me, that you see me, that you support me, that you hear me. Oh, this is making me a little teary eyed because the more you do the inner work and you release, the baggage, the emotions, the trauma, all of it. And we call it spiraling up. You spiral up to higher levels. And you could think of it as an ascension of sorts, right? You are ascending to better versions of yourself, higher versions of yourself, but you're also ascending and connecting to the divine and God and spirit, source, the universe, whatever you choose to call it, whatever your higher power, higher source belief is, that is what we are connecting to and ascending to. So I would tell you, if you are stuck in these moments where you aren't getting these signs and seeing these synchronicities and feeling aligned, there are some things you can do to actually achieve this. So it's a simple 4-step process. And I discovered this over time, but when I'm working with people who tell me that they just want some signs that there's something else out there or they're being supported, this is what you can do. Number 1, tune out and then tune in. And what I mean by that, what I mean by the tune out portion is unplug yourself from the noise and the distractions. Get off the TV, get off your phone, get away from all of the distractions and give yourself some time to just be and decompress. Clear your mind, just find a way to just be quiet and allow yourself to just be and observe. And that is really hard for a lot of people. And if that's hard for you, I would say that there's some work to be done, because typically when we have difficulty sitting with ourselves and sitting with silence, it usually is from anxiety and fear and all the stuff that ruminates and spins in our minds, and we can spiral. So if that's the case, I would first suggest doing some work surrounding that type of stuff so that you can have that space to tune out and just be. And then when you're in that tuned out space, tune into yourself, tune into how you're feeling, what's going on, and tune into the world around you, tune into the energy. Go sit outside, just allow yourself to hear nature, hear the birds, hear the wind, hear the leaves, rustling and flowing. Right now it's fall. And so you're going to hear a lot of that type of stuff. Just allow yourself to tune into the world around you. If you pray, this is a time you could do that too. But I will say, I do know some people, a lot of people I've worked with that pray a lot, and they are still blocked. They're blocked energetically from God, the divine, and source. So that's something, again, if you have some blocks, you need to figure out what they are first. So first step, tune out and then tune in, because when you have all of the noise is gone, the distractions are gone, and you can just tune into yourself, it gives you pretty much a direct channel to the energy that's out there in the divine. Number 2 is ask. We don't do a good job of asking for many things. So ask God and the divine, because they are always listening. Ask for a sign. Say, God, spirit, source, universe, creator, whatever term you would like to use, say, hey, I would love a sign that you are seeing me, you are supporting me, you hear me, whatever it is, but make it clear. The more clear and specific we are in our requests to the divine, always, those are the ones that tend to go through, and those are the ones that tend to be answered. Don't go on and be like, oh, I'm feeling really crappy today and I just need a sign, and it'd be awesome if that sign could be, a bird or a feather or, somebody dropping some change on the sidewalk or something like that type of stuff. You need to be very specific and specific, brief, and feel it. Just, be like, hey, God, the divine, guardian angels. I ask my guardian angels a lot for signs, and just be like, God, I really need support today. Can you show me a sign? It might even show up as numbers, like angel numbers, as people will call them, like 111, 222, 333, or 1234, or 1212. Those types of things. There's lots of ways we can see these things. And it's funny because I wanted to, I'll go through the 3 steps and then share a story with you that happened to me not last week, but the week before. Step 3 is observe. Take a minute to notice what's around you and do it. Like, these things are happening all the time, and you may not just know it. You could be scrolling and there might be something that's meant for you on your phone and you miss it. Now I tend to pick up on those things. I'll be driving around and I'll see certain words. I will hear certain things on the radio. My friends will I'll be thinking about the other day. I was actually thinking about, I wanted some new books to read. And it was funny because I saw multiple posts on Facebook about books that my friends and colleagues are reading or listening to, podcasts too. I was like, I need some new juice in my life. What can I have? And I that stuff started coming to me. And so simple little things like that. But I notice the numbers a lot. And it's not like I'm looking for it. Like I'll be, out in my garage working out, and then I'll look up and I'll see the clock says, oftentimes I'm out there later in the afternoon. So I'll see 4:44 or 5:55, or, when I'm looking at my watch to see, the timing when I'm working out, I'll look at it at exactly one of those moments, or like when it's 1:11 or 2:22. So there's lots of ways to see these signs and synchronicities. So observe and take a moment. Another little game I like to play. I've told you before, like I'll do the thing where, you're driving, down the highway and you look, 5 lanes over, 3 lanes over, just to see if people are looking back at you. That's like that energetic connection that we've talked about. You can also think about a friend, think about them intently for, a couple of minutes and see if they text you or call you, or you see something from them show up on social media. These are all little ways that you could observe and take notice of these synchronicities and signs. It's just you have to tune in your awareness. And the more you do the inner work, you can tune into this stuff. And then number 4 is take action. And it's a lot of what we're talking about, actually following through on these steps and consistently doing that on a daily basis to kind of build this energetic and vibrational rapport. But if you ask for something specific, you should follow up on it and give back if necessary, because there's always an energetic exchange, right? So if you get that sign, take a moment to pause and give gratitude for that, right? You have that, take that action, have that energetic exchange. Or if you asked for something specific, say you're like, I need, an extra $100 in my bank account today, and that actually happens, give back with that too. Don't just take it and, be like, yay, this is great. I'm going to keep asking. There needs to be reciprocity here. There needs to be gratitude. There needs to be an exchange. So, take action, do the things you say you're going to do with these signs, with these, synchronicities, opportunities, and always be giving gratitude. Because when you come from a loving, gracious heart, more things are going to happen for you. And this relationship that you have with the divine will be cultivated even more. And so those are the 4 steps. Tune out, then tune in. Ask, because God and the divine are always listening. Observe and take a moment to notice the signs, synchronicities, and what's going on around you. And number 4, take action and have gratitude. So I said I was going to share share an instance where all of this happened for me just recently. And it's funny because I have been undergoing a lot of change and transformation in the last, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, very much 6 weeks. So it's different, right? Because when we get to these different layers and levels of healing, different things come through. And a lot of times when you first start out, you're focusing on pain, you're focusing on trauma, like big traumas and big emotional issues, right? And as you, like we talk about that spiraling up or ascending, all of those things get dealt with and integrated and fall away, and, or they get transmuted, and different levels appear. And for me, I was very aware that I felt like I was missing some things. I had dealt with things that I was actively avoiding, because avoiding is a trauma response. And there weren't too many things, but I do check-ins to see where I'm at. So I checked in to see, what was I avoiding? I dealt with that stuff, and I made an intention and a commitment to myself to make sure that I wasn't doing that. So did that. And then as I was going through a lot of trauma work from the standpoint of things I'd already dealt with, but it was new layers or pieces of what I dealt with. And I do this, like I've told y'all before, that I do a lot of the work that I do with other people with myself. And other times I need to bring in friends. And so I was working with my friend, Michelle Dowker, who I interviewed her on the podcast in the last little bit. So I would encourage you guys to check out that podcast because it was great. She's just amazing at what she does. And she is a great for me to because I'm good at digging into myself and finding things, but she finds things that I'm not seeing. And she also might see it in just a little bit different way. And I think that's really important. It's important to know, when you can do things yourself and when you need somebody else to help you out. And so I had been working with her, and something inside me a couple days later after we had a session, was saying it told me to ask myself, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? What am I not aware of? And so I did that. And I think that was the day before. So then I woke up, this was a Friday, and on Fridays, I have a very short window of time because my kids go to school at 8 and they have to get picked up at 12:15. And they have short days on Fridays. And so it was interesting because I did some stuff around the house. My mom and dad were coming to visit, just that, on Monday or Tuesday. And I ended up, I was doing some cleaning, doing some, errands and organizing while the kids were not home, and I left the house. And what is crazy is in 2 hours, I found a pair of shorts that were missing in a bag. I had a patient who I had missed her plan, and I'll explain why. And my cashier ended up forgetting to give me $4. So it was really interesting. So I'll explain all of that to you. And so typically we in Colorado, we get charged for, taking bags at stores now. So that's neither here nor there because I've been using reusable grocery bags for about 20 years. And so it was funny because I usually have about 20 of them in the trunk of my car, and I never, ever, ever go through them. Typically I grab the top 3 and go. But for some reason, I decided to organize the bags, and I'm going through the bags and I'm like, oh, this one kind of feels heavy. And I open it up, and it was a pair of shorts that I meant to return to Costco, which was actually where I was going. And I was like, oh, look at that. How funny is that? So then I kind of laughed and chuckled to myself, and I looked up at the sky and I'm like, I see you. I see what you're doing. That was one of the kind of a nod, kind of tongue in cheek, this is what you're missing. So I saw that. And I'm like, that's great. So I drive to Costco, and as I pull into the parking space, I get a message from a patient, and she was asking about her plan, and she had specifically asked about a change in a supplement. And it was funny because when we had met for her appointment, she wasn't quite through her previous plan. And so I had written down, you don't have to don't send it to her immediately, but send it to her within the next week. But somehow on that list, it got tossed, and I totally forgot about this, doing the plan for her. And so I said to her, I'm like, oh, sorry. My apologies. I totally dropped the ball. And so when I got home, as soon as I got home, I made her that treatment plan. And it was just, again, I was like, oh, another thing that I missed. And that was all in the space of about a half hour. And I did my stuff at Costco. Then I ran over to Trader Joe's, was in the same parking lot. So I ran over to Trader Joe's to get a couple of other things that I couldn't get at Costco. And I never, ever have cash. I pretty much only have cash if somebody gives it to me, or if there's buy or sell something on Facebook Marketplace or places like that. And so I had a little bit of cash, and I handed the cashier, it was $100 bill because I actually closed out a bank account. That's why I had that. So I had $100 bill, and I was like, oh, I've got cash. I'll, give it to the cashier at Trader Joe's. And he was supposed to give me back $64 and change. And I noticed it was just 60 and change. And it was funny because I usually, when I'm getting cash, never count it. I never, ever, ever count it. And I decided for that moment, I was like, okay, I counted it. And I'm like, oh, you forgot to give me the $4. And it was funny because he looked really confused. He's like, what are you talking about? And then I showed him my change, and I showed him the receipt, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I never do this. So it was one of those funny things, because it was, again, a sign, I believe, because of the fact that I had been very cognizant of financial responsibility and things I might be missing. So I do have a budget that I do every month, and I know what our, expenses are. I track them, all of that stuff. And then obviously I have things going on for my business, but I felt like I needed to take that to another level. Also, like just good financial stability practices of having things like life insurance and all that stuff that we tend to ignore. Right. And I felt like that was something that I was not being like completely aware of, and just, kind of the exchange of money, the energy of money. That was stuff I had been thinking about too. And so it was fascinating because then that happened and I'm like, that's super, super interesting. So I had those three things happen really, really fast. And then I had to go pick up my kids from school. So I'm in the car line for my daughter. And it was funny because in all of this work that I have been doing, I was looking for more clarity. And it was funny because I looked up and the car in front of me, on the back of it said Clarity. It was a Honda. And I did not know that there was a Honda Clarity model. And it was funny because all of these things are happening. And then it said Clarity. And as I was driving out of the parking lot, I saw a friend who had been meaning to connect with about the podcast. It wasn't her truck, but it was a van that had her last name on it. And I was like, okay, so here you go, a 2.5 hour time span. And it's like, what am I missing? What am I not aware of? What am I not seeing? And it was all of these things in a row. So I tell you all of this to remind you that there is a higher power. There is a source. There is a creator. You can call it God, you can call it universe, creator, whatever you want. But there is something out there that connects us all. And when we give the space and the time and honor and feel gratitude, we can develop this relationship and connect, and we can see these amazing signs from God and the divine. And as always, sending you lots of love until next time.
If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.